Well, good morning. We've hit the halfway point in session, so things are stepping up, as you can see here. Representative Spence Hawley, the Democratic leader for the House, and I have Senator Troy Heinert this morning's with us. He's the Assistant Democrat leader in the Senate side. This week, the last few weeks, we've been talking about quiet and slow, and the rumor was that there was a bunch of bills out there. Well, the rumor was true. There was a bunch of bills out there, as you all know. We had 534 bills totally filed as compared to the 330 or 340 last year. I know from our side on state affairs, we met 4 times this week, and we're probably going to have to meet more next week again to get all the bills we've got going through. This week, changed a little bit more the focus and the discussion what's happening. One of the issues that we're seeing is we've talked a little bit about initiated measures and referred measures and the bills, and there's been excess of 30 bills introduced limiting initiated and referred measures this year. We had the task force last summer, the legislature did, to review the initiated measures and referendum process, and there was a handful of bills that were brought forth out of that committee, and we supported most of those, and most of those were taken care of early in session. But since then, it's just like it's an onslaught. On the House side alone, I was going through and listing, we had in state affairs, we had 1282 out-of-state advertising. Any campaign that's run has to say that there's out-of-state money on it if it's initiated a referendum, and that passed out-of-state fairs. There was a 1302 to prohibit compensation for circulators. Right now, some circulators can be paid. That was defeated, thank God, in state affairs. 1304, we had challenges to the petition signatures to make it easier to challenge the signatures on a petition, and that was passed out of the state affairs. We had 1201, which requires information on the ballot for initiated measures. You've got to have at the bottom of it the name of the sponsor and if he received any compensation, if he's a registered lobbyist, and that's passed out and is going to the floor. We had 1216 to limit state out-of-state contributions to $100,000 on initiated or referred measures. This has been declared constitutional in other states, but we passed it out of state affairs, so we'll have that on the floor. We had 1196, and this was, well, I'll probably go to 1177 first. This was a simple one that says if you're passing a petition as a circulator, you need to have your name, email, phone number, and originally residence on there. We were able to get the residence stricken off, but it went through. And as I mentioned on the floor yesterday, I voted against this one. I might have supported it if that was the bill we were talking about instead of the whole body of bills that are coming forward. We had 1196 on the floor yesterday. This was the one that gets into the circulators. And I brought along, there's a section 6 in there, and every time I read it, I'm still flabbergasted that we passed it and send it across. If you're a circulator, you have to do a sworn affidavit to circulate the petition, and then to do that, in that affidavit, you've got to say which state you're licensed to drive, what your driver's license number is, your expiration date of your driver's license, your current state of voter registration, your length of time at your current physical address, your 2 previous addresses, and whether your addresses were in South Dakota, whether your current physical address of your immediate family members are located in South Dakota, the current state in which your motor vehicle is owned or leased, and a sworn statement of the circulator indicating your intention to stay in the state after the circulation deadline, including the type and location of your intended employment. Anything else relevant to residency, including your library card and your utility bills. And then you have to say if you pay in-state tuition at a secondary school, Then if you have a resident hunting or fishing license of any kind, and you have to give them that. And then what's your prefix on your mobile phone? What's your, and all that is required before you can even circulate a petition. Now, I understand what they're after. The intent is that it's right now against the law for somebody out of state to circulate petitions in South Dakota if you're not a resident. And I agree with that. We don't want that to happen. But this is such an onerous bill on what it does to our average citizen of South Dakota who truly has a concern and they want to circulate a petition. And oh, by the way, if there's any violation of one of those parts there, you lose the ability to contribute to any campaign for 4 years. And if there's a violation of somewhere in this, the ballot can be taken off of the voting. So it's just a terrible bill, which was passed forward. It'll go over the Senate, and so I'm just giving you a heads up. You guys will have an opportunity. The frustration level comes from the fact not that we're having this discussion on a bill or making a tweak to our initiated measures. The discussion is if you want to stop the initiative process in South Dakota, then they need to bring a bill, and we need to have that discussion. I would say the voters of South Dakota don't want to stop the initiated process and the referral process, and they would not be supportive of it. This is simply the means to just try to squeeze it down to make it impossible for people to put it on the ballot. We had some other bills come through. I brought the redistricting commission that we would like to bring it to a vote that we would change how we redistrict. We would take it out of the hands of the legislatures and set up a 9-member nonpartisan commission. Many states across the nation are having this discussion right now. Matter of fact, Indiana, the Republicans are in the majority, and they've presented a bill to switch from legislators to a commission, even majority parties. So it's just kind of, this is a discussion that's happening. Legislators should not be allowed to pick their voters. The voters should pick the legislators, is the way I feel for it. Then the other one we've had on the floor through the House was 1199, prohibit collective bargaining at the Board of Regents. We had this discussion in the Senate. It was, State Affairs, and it was passed out of the House State Affairs, and it'll be coming to the floor scheduled for today, either tomorrow or today. This is a bill that doesn't solve anything. When I visit with administrators at SDSU, they said that collective bargaining works well for them. They have a person or group of people to visit with, negotiate. If there's grievances, there's a process to bring it forward through, and they don't see a problem at all with how it's working right now. When you visit with the professors, the researchers, they think this is extremely important to them. The second part of it's the message it sends to the people. SDSU, USD have switched to a D1, Division I. It's not only an athletic deal, it's an academic deal, raising the level. School of Mines, great emphasis, raising their programs and what they're doing out there. We've got a freeze going on for the second year in state employees. We've had cuts in the past, we've had freezes in the past also. Now you couple this with getting rid of their ability on the collective bargaining to have discussions, and whether it makes a difference or not, the difference is in their minds. And when they're looking at universities to go to and they're trying to make a decision, first off, they know they're not going to make top dollar coming to South Dakota. There's other benefits. But then if they look, what is their attitude towards education and to higher ed? And if it's, well, you guys, we don't really respect you and we don't think that you should be able to be involved in negotiating, they're going to make a decision to go someplace else. It's quite simple. So I see this as a detriment, and I would say that 80% of the emails that I get from the professors and the university employees, that's their comments. Why did I make the decision to come to a state who has no respect for us anyhow? So there's several other bills I can go in, and I need to turn it over to Senator Heiner and let him talk a little about what's happened on the Senate side then.
Well, thank you, Spence, and good morning. Senator Troy Heiner, District 26. So the Senate's been fairly busy. We've been clearing our calendar every day, taking debate on the floor, which, some of it has been pretty good. We've dealt with lots of resolutions, as we kind of expected in the Senate. Obviously, there's two people in the Senate running for a higher office. So, a lot of those are attempted to try to force a vote out of those two individuals. In state affairs, we dealt with a bill yesterday, 129, that was sponsored by Senator Sutton. And what it did was restored the campaign finance limits from IM 22. Senator pitched the bill. There were no opponents. It was just straightforward. Install those same limits that was passed by the voters in IM 22. No other title, no other ramifications in any part of that. Like I said, there was no opponents. There weren't even any questions asked. I made the motion to do pass. It was seconded, called for the vote, and completely failed. 2 yay votes, Senator Sutton and myself. And that was frustrating to me. If you're going to vote against something that the voters had just passed, at least you could do is ask questions. And it just kind of shows that this level of arrogance that is happening right here in Pierre. And I don't think that's fair to the voter in South Dakota. So, those kind of things are still happening. I'm surprised that even with all of the dealings with IM 22 that we had last year, that there is the number of initiated measure, campaign finance, petition circulator bills coming this year. I thought that as riled up as people were last year, that maybe we'd get a break from that, but obviously I guessed wrong. The Senate has been busy. I think we've seen some stances taken by a few of our members that are directed at a certain population in our state, and that has created some controversy and angst in the chamber. Hopefully we can get past that and get down to doing the business that we're supposed to be doing. I'm glad to answer any questions. One thing I am proud of in the Senate, we recognized and honored the 150-year anniversary of the signing of the Fort Laramie Treaty, and that passed 25-7. I think that's a big step. Being a tribal member from a tribal community, that is one of our founding documents, and we still hold that to be true. I was glad the Senate recognized its importance, and hopefully we'll just keep working together to try to bridge that gap between native and non-natives in our state and arrive at the same place.
Good. Questions?
Senator Heinrich, do you think that some of the changes to the initiative process, will they have much luck in the Senate? It seems like maybe the Speaker is pushing a lot of those things. So have you had conversations about how they might go in your chamber?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, it's kind of a crapshoot in the Senate. I don't think a lot of those measures are going to gain a lot of traction in the Senate. We've sent a few out ourselves that I kind of frankly was surprised even come out of our chamber. But it'll just depend on how well it's pitched and what the appetite is. If some of the stuff that we've sent out to the Senate makes it through, I think the Senate's going to say, that's probably good enough. We don't need to go down this road as well.
And then, on I think it was Senator Curran's craft brewing bill yesterday. I think you voted for that, but Senator Sutton voted against it. Do you know how Democrats might come down on your governors with local versus Senator Curran's proposal?
Well, my vote yesterday was, let's get it to the floor. Let's see where some compromise is. Obviously, this is an industry that is growing and changing. Other states are are seeing a huge influx of microbreweries, and I think we're starting to see it here. The three-tiered system in South Dakota has been working. I was kind of surprised that, in the last year of a lame duck session, that the governor wanted to take on all the alcohol laws. I mean, that is a huge endeavor. And, I just don't know in a 40-day session if we're able to come up with some kind of compromise and meet the needs of everybody. But I think the conversation has been started between Senator Curd's bill, the governor's bill, and we'll just see where that lands.
Yeah, just a quick comment. I'm on the Commerce Committee on the House side, and we've got the alcohol bills coming through there. But in reference to your question, it's really not a partisan discussion at all. So you say how the Democrats going to come down on it. It'll be an each individual decision, in honesty. We really aren't taking a caucus position on this. So it's more of just what works for your district and what works for South Dakota will be the discussions that we'll have.
Last night there was a robust non-meandered discussion. You voted in favor of the pass without recommendation, but said you don't personally favor the bill. Any sense as to how that debate's going to play out?
So, yes, last night, the Ag and Natural Resources Committee dedicated just about 3 hours, maybe a little over, to opening up the non-meandered waters talks again. I supported the motion with no recommendation. I told everybody that I wouldn't support a due pass. I don't really like SB 199. I think it is unfair to landowners, and I think it could have some unintended consequences if they start these, hearings in local areas to either open or close a certain body of water. So what will happen is we'll have to vote to calendar it. And if they get a majority, then we will put it on the calendar and have the debate. If they don't, then, it's over. I'm not going to support calendaring it. I think, I've been here 6 years, and we've dealt with it probably three or four bills every year in my 6 years. We even had a special session. We come up with a plan that is, for all intents and purposes, working right now. I think that should be the law, and then remove the sunset. And if we run into problems, then we come back and fix each piece as it arises. I think throwing out what we did in the special session, adopting 199, probably isn't the way to go. I know that there is legislative fatigue on this issue. So we'll see what happens today, whether we vote to calendar it or not. I have no idea where that ends up.
Sorry to ask about alcohol one more time, but for both of you, but also I think Senator Heiner, you had kind of concerns about this last year, about lawmakers voting on things in which they have a business interest or some sort of monetary interest. Do either of you have any concerns about, I think primarily, Senator Colbeck or Representative Neal, being distributors, voting on that bill, and then maybe to a lesser extent some of the bar owners, Senator Maher, Senator Ewing maybe, or Knapp, I can't remember who else. Do you have any issues with that?
Well, I can tell you, I used to be in this business as well. I don't own my establishment anymore. And I think there is something to having people with knowledge of the industry, kind of that inside expertise. I would hope that they are able to make decisions based on what's good for South Dakota, not just them personally. I know all those gentlemen, and I find them to be honorable people. I think it is a little different than some of the issues that I raised last year with the IM-22 lawsuit just in the fact that they were saying they were self-funding it and that kind of thing. So, you know, I'm going to listen to what they have to say, and then having the expertise of owning a barn, being part of that process, you know, might give me a little bit different insight, and even for our caucus. So, you know, we'll see what they have to say. I don't see it as a problem right now. You know, it's got to pass the entire legislature, so we'll see where it goes.
You know, we passed the conflict of interest laws just a couple years ago, and the concern there was more that these are appointed boards and commissions usually, and we want to make sure that you can't stack it with conflict of interest, and so you got to disclose all of it. The legislature's a different deal. Every 2 years we go back to our voters, and we aren't allowed on the floor to abstain or not vote because we got a conflict of interest. We're expected to vote on every bill, and to be honest, I would say that we all have some conflict of interest in a bill or two throughout the year, no matter what it is. But we're picked by the voters to make a decision and to hopefully represent them in South Dakota. And if they think that our conflict of interest is overweighing our decisions in their benefit, they can vote us out. So I don't have a problem with those members being involved and being involved in the discussion. Representative Beals on our Commerce Committee, and he can bring into the discussion some information that we may not have otherwise. So, and we know where they're coming from, so everything's above board, I guess. Any other questions at all? Thank you for your time. Have a safe drive home.
Thank you.